177 days until Election Day, many are once again wondering how to think about Donald Trump, his election denial, and his loyal followers. Well, my next guest says their movement has deep historical precedence and is a rebellion against nothing less than the America envisioned by the Founding Fathers. That is why Robert Kagan titled his book, Rebellion: How Anti-Liberalism is Tearing America Apart Again. Kagan is a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Bob, let's do this historically because I think it's important people understand. So your argument is everyone thinks of America and the founding of America as the kind of culmination of an Enlightenment liberal project. Liberal meaning individual liberty, not big government spending. But you say from the beginning there was also an anti-liberalism that was part of the founding.
Sure, and you know, it was a culmination of a certain way of thinking, but it also was something brand new. And I think it's important to remember what was entirely new about the American system and take it for granted, which is the principle of universal individual rights. Before that, the colonists enjoyed their rights as Englishmen, but the English did not base their constitution on the idea of universal natural rights. So that was a huge leap. So to establish a system where you're supposed to care about others' freedom as much as your own is a very difficult thing. In some ways, it's contrary to human nature. And so from the beginning, there has always been resistance to this idea, and certainly in the United States, most obviously and prominently because there was still slavery. So even leaders of the South opposed the Declaration of Independence, said it was unnatural. And I think the people thought maybe that died with the Civil War or it died with Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. But I think what we've seen is that this anti-liberal strain, this resistance to the idea of universal rights goes throughout our history, and we're seeing it still today.
There was an article recently that pointed out, looked at the rhetoric of Trump this time around and pointed out it's much more extreme even than the rhetoric in 2016. It talks about revenge, retribution, I will destroy the old elites. Do you worry about that, or is that just Trump, winging it?
You know, you never know what Trump means and what he doesn't mean. The one thing I feel confident of is that I'm sure this experience of being put on trial would be a searing experience for anyone. And for someone who foresees the possibility that he could be the most powerful man in the world, the thought of vengeance is clearly forefront in his mind. So I think the answer is yes, he will seek vengeance. But the thing to understand, as I think most people do about Trump, is the problem is not that he has a careful plan for becoming a dictator. I don't think he has any such plan. He will be a dictator by virtue of the fact that he wants what he wants, when he wants it, and how he wants to get it. And if you listen to him talk about his second-term plans, a lot of it involves militarizing various elements of society, using the military on immigration, using Homeland Security as a force. And, who's going to stand in his way when he wants to do something like that?
What do you say to people who say, look, this is the usual liberal hand-wringing and catastrophizing. He was elected. He's ruled for 4 years. So what if he gets elected again?
Well, when people talk about his rule for 4 years and they have this economic policy and that, they leave out the very end. And at the very end, he tried to rule as a dictator. I mean, let's just think this through. If Mike Pence had not shown the backbone that he did at that moment, Trump might conceivably have stolen an election that had gone against him. And at that point, he would be ruling as a dictator, not as a democratically elected president. He was completely willing to do that, if not eager to do that. I would ask voters in America, what more do you need to know about a presidential candidate? We don't know what Biden's going to be like in a second term, but we know what the parameters of what Biden are going to be like in a second term. Trump has proven that for him there are no parameters. He has said he's willing to go against the Constitution. And so we don't know for sure what he's actually going to do, but if we're making a judgment about presidential candidates, can we not pick the guy who's already tried to become a dictator and says he would do it again?
It leaves you, I have to say, the book, it is not a hopeful book.
There is a slight hopeful bit at the end of it, in the sense that I believe if we can get past this year's crisis, in many ways this is a last gasp of a shrinking white nationalist minority, a shrinking white Christian nationalist minority. This is their last chance. Trump is their last chance because the country is moving on. It's becoming more and more diverse. It's going to be a majority minority country pretty soon. And so their ability to pull this off again, I think, is limited. Also, I think once Donald Trump is gone, the movement will splinter and follow different people. So I believe we are in a uniquely dangerous moment, but that if we can get past this moment, things look a lot better.
On that note of optimism, Bob Kagan, pleasure to have you on.